Have you ever wondered, does a Phase I environmental site assessment actually tell you whether a facility is following environmental laws? Or is it just about contamination and past history of the property? Here's the thing, a Phase I ESA is one of the most common environmental reports out there, but there's a lot of confusion about what it actually covers and what it doesn't. So today, we're breaking down the difference between contamination risk and regulatory compliance and what you really need to do if you want to understand both. Hi there, I'm Doug Rulin from RMA, your environmental experts. We help businesses and property owners navigate environmental due diligence and compliance every day. And before we go too far, just know this. If you ever need a hand figuring out whether your site needs a Phase I ESA, a compliance audit, or both, you can always reach out to us here at RMA. All right, let's jump in. Now, a Phase I environmental site assessment, or Phase I ESA, or just Phase I, is a formal standardized report following a specific method called ASTM E1527, the latest version being E1527-21. Its sole purpose is to identify recognized environmental conditions, or RECs, which is basically any sign that contamination might be present due to the past or current use of hazardous materials or petroleum products. It's part of environmental due diligence, the process that buyers, sellers, and lenders should go through to protect themselves from liability under federal law, specifically CERCLA, better known as the Superfund Law. So the big question of Phase I answers is there any evidence that this property could be contaminated? That's it. The assessment usually involves record reviews, database searches, site visits, and interviews, but it does not include sampling, testing, or reviewing permits and compliance records. If the Phase I finds potential contamination issues, that's when you might move into a Phase II assessment, where sampling and lab testing come into play. And keep in mind, all of that is within the scope of a Phase I ESA. Now here's where people get mixed up. A Phase I ESA looks for contamination risk, but it does not evaluate regulatory compliance. Things like air permits, hazardous waste management, or stormwater plans. They're simply not within the ASTM scope. But that's where a compliance audit comes in. A compliance audit looks at whether your facility is actually following all applicable environmental laws under programs like the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, or RCRA for hazardous waste. So while a Phase I ESA might say, there used to be a dry cleaner here, you might have soil contamination, a compliance audit might say, you're missing waste manifests and your spill plan is out of date. Two different goals, both really important, but not the same thing. And the reason a Phase I doesn't include compliance? Simple. Again, the ASTM standard doesn't require it. ASTM E1527 focuses on the property-based contamination risk, not ongoing environmental compliance. Think of it this way. A Phase I ESA looks backward, asking, what happened here in the past or today that could cause contamination? A compliance audit looks forward, asking, are we following all the rules right now? So why does this matter? Because if you're buying or refinancing a property, your lender will probably require a Phase I ESA. That protects you and them from liability for past contamination. But once you own the property, especially if it's an operating facility, you become responsible for current compliance. If that site and that operation is out of compliance, regulators won't care that it started under a previous owner. That's why smart buyers pair a Phase I ESA with a compliance audit before closing. The Phase I identifies potential contamination, while the audit identifies potential regulatory issues. Together, they give you the full picture, past and present, so you can make informed decisions and protect your investment. Here's a quick example. We worked with a client buying a manufacturing facility. The Phase I came back clean, no contamination concerns. But during the compliance audit, we found that the stormwater permit had expired, The SPCC plan was outdated and their chemical inventory reports hadn't been filed. None of that shows up in the Phase I because it isn't part of the scope. But by finding those issues early, the buyer was able to negotiate with the seller to fix them before closing, saving time, money, and headaches down the road. So here's the bottom line. A Phase I ESA identifies contamination risks. A compliance audit identifies regulatory compliance risks. If you're buying or operating an industrial property, you probably need both. At RMA, we help clients bridge the gap between property risk and operational risk, so you get the complete picture and peace of mind that your investment is protected from all sides. If you're still not sure which assessment your site needs, reach out to us here at RMA. We'll help you figure out the right path and make sure that you're protected no matter what comes up.